Fortunately, I got onto a good website, friend Jim Hoffman's site, their WTC7.net. And the nice thing that, and I have many friends now, you know, in this area. One nice thing that they did on that site is to provide references. And I like that because then I can check, you know. I check for myself. So I go to this reference. It talks about sulfidation of steel. Gosh, that's curious. How did this sulfur get in this steel? You know, it's high temperature corrosion of the steel with sulfur. Man, that's really strange. I read that. I went to the source. I read it. And pretty quick, I'm learning about molten metal pools under both towers after they collapsed and Building 7. Now, Building 7 wasn't even hit by a jet, you know, and yet it comes down, and then it's got this molten metal underneath. And where'd that come from? I mean, you know, I hear people say, well, that would be from the metal of the planes. Well, that might work for the towers, possibly, but it sure doesn't work for Building 7. You know, it was 300 plus feet away from the North Tower, and no plane hit it. So where does this molten metal come from? So pretty quick then, as I studied this, I wrote up a paper, which many of you have seen. If you haven't, I hope you would. Just Google on Steve Jones, World Trade Center. It'll pull it right up. And I studied various aspects. And the molten metal is my first topic. It's the one that really caught my interest, and the data is just coming together. Now, I have a sample of this molten metal. Previously, molten metal here. Just a tiny sample. This is really all we need. I brought along with me at the last minute. I thought, well, I'll throw that in. And by analyzing this, we determined it is not molten aluminum from the plane. Okay. Indeed, it contains a great deal of iron, which is the product of the thermite reaction. Now, thermite can be purchased on eBay, and many people, I show it in my class, physics, and I'll be showing it this fall in my physical science class. It's commonly shown. It's a very brilliant reaction. You get this white flare, this white dust, which is aluminum oxide coming off, and then this yellow hot molten metal, just white yellow hot, you know, flowing out of this reaction. Now this thermite is so hot, this molten iron, especially when you mix sulfur in. Now it's called thermate. So sulfur added to this molten iron, it'll just cut through steel, through structural steel, for example, like a knife through butter. And we also see this molten, yellow hot molten metal with white wispy ash pouring out of the South Tower just minutes before its collapse. And I've shown this video. And it's just amazing. Photographs of that. It's in the NIST report. They say, well, probably molten aluminum from the aircraft. No, sorry, it's not. We did experiments at BYU with molten aluminum. We heated the steel pan up to yellow hot temperature, pour that aluminum out. It looks like silvery aluminum, even though the pan is yellow hot. And there's reasons for that. Aluminum just doesn't emit much of this incandescent glow. It's very low emissivity. Sorry for the technical details, but the point is the experiments show it still looks silvery, and yet out of the World Trade Center it's yellow hot. Okay, so as we looked at this, and the evidence is just piling up, this is it has the characteristics not of molten aluminum and not of molten, you know, it's not just structural steel that somehow melted. No, it's very little chromium. But it does have sulfur and manganese and some other elements that are characteristic, you see. It's like a fingerprint that the criminal left behind. This carries with it evidence. How was this done? What was used? And I should explain real quickly. This particular, people ask me all the time, where'd you get this? Well, there's a woman in Northeast who was involved, went to one of these memorials that was being put together, you know, the 9/11 memorial, structural steel from the World Trade Center. She noticed on it dirt clinging to the structure. This is several years ago, before I joined the game here, so to speak. And she said, well, that dirt is going to be subject to rain. It's just going to be a mess. And so she just cleaned it up. She just cleaned some of that dirt off. You know, it's in the Northeast, and this memorial's going up. She cleaned it up, put it in a bucket. She saved it. Then as soon as my paper appeared, she read my paper. This last November would have been. As she read my paper, I'm calling for an investigation, particularly of this molten metal, and see what's going on. It'll tell us what happened, give us insight into what really happened on 9/11. Well, she immediately sent me this sample, quite a large sample actually, but not all of it. She said, I'm keeping some back, and I said, that's good, because we may want to, you know, have another lab check it. Don't send it here. You know, you'll send it to another lab directly at some point, probably. Anyway, in there, I don't think she even noticed, there's this molten metal chunks. See? In with this, just from this memorial to 9/11 and to the families who I deeply sympathize with those families. So we checked this metal, and that's how we got it. And another sample like it, same characteristics, high in iron, manganese, fluorine. I mean, you know, where do these chemicals come from? And then as I studied about thermite, arson, I'll wrap it up here.
No, I was checking to see if my mic was live, Professor. It's key to state you got it from another site separately.
Yes, we have two separate sites. This other one. Okay, so, but similar process, you know, acquiring this, just private people, you know, and so anyway, the point is, as we analyze this, I get into this question of thermite arson. It turns out that arsonists, these are the bad guys, right, start fires using thermite. I mean, you can buy this stuff on eBay. It's not like it's a secret or something, and I don't recommend you play with this stuff, by the way. It's very dangerous. Okay, molten yellow hot iron pours out of this. It's highly dangerous, but it will cut through iron. So arsonists use it, and now there's a whole field then of investigation. Investigators know how to look at this metal, and we will be working with others too, and making sure of our results. And so, but these things are coming together, this chain of evidence. This is not the only thing. This is just one of the things. The collapse of Building 7 is another. Studied that. A great paper by Professor Cutler. It's in the Journal of 9/11 Studies.com. You can look that up.